I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the stress from work, the need to get away from the hum of electricity, of phones ringing and emails stacking up. Or maybe it was the fact that I had been feeling this itch lately, a pull towards something raw, something real. Whatever it was, it had me driving out into the deep woods of Oregon, looking for a place where I could truly be alone. I packed light, a tent, a sleeping bag, enough food for a few days, a hunting knife, a flashlight, and a small axe. I wasn't planning on being out there long, just enough time to clear my head. I had done trips like this before, but never this deep into the woods. No trails, no people, just me, nature, and silence. The first day was peaceful. The smell of damp earth and pine, the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, birds calling to each other. I walked for miles, deeper and deeper, until I found a small clearing near a creek. It was perfect, secluded, flat, surrounded by thick trees. I set up my tent, gathered some firewood, and settled in as the sun started dipping behind the trees. The first night was uneventful. Just the usual noises, owls, the occasional snap of a twig, the rustling of small animals in the underbrush. I slept fine, better than I had in weeks. The second day, I explored further, following the creek upstream. I didn't bring a GPS. I didn't want one. I had my compass and a map, and I was confident in my ability to find my way back. It was around midday when I saw the first sign that something was wrong. A deer carcass, torn apart, left to rot. Now, I've hunted before. I know what an animal kill looks like. This wasn't clean. It was messy, brutal. The ribcage was cracked open, the head missing. There were no drag marks, no signs that it had been eaten in a normal way. Just destruction. I tried to shake it off. Maybe a bear, maybe a mountain lion, but something about it unsettled me. That evening, as I was gathering firewood, I heard something. A low, distant sound, almost like a moan. It was coming from deeper in the woods. I stood still, listening. It happened again. A long, drawn-out wail, not quite human, not quite animal. I told myself it was just the wind, just the trees bending and creaking. But my gut told me otherwise. I built my fire higher than usual that night. The flames flickered and cracked, casting long shadows against the trees. I tried to shake the feeling of unease, but it clung to me. That sound, whatever it was, kept echoing in my head. I kept my knife close, my flashlight ready. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. Something was outside my tent. I could hear the leaves crunching, slow and deliberate, not the quick, erratic movements of a small animal. This was something big. My heart pounded as I gripped my knife. The sound stopped. The silence stretched on. Then a single, sharp snap of a branch. I didn't move. I barely breathed. I wanted to turn on my flashlight, but something in me told me not to. I just sat there, knife in hand, listening. Then, slowly, the footsteps started again, moving away this time, fading into the distance. I stayed awake until dawn. When the sun finally rose, I stepped outside. My fire had burned low, the embers still glowing faintly. Everything looked normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone out there. I checked the ground around my tent. There were no tracks, no prints, nothing, but I knew what I heard. I thought about packing up and heading back, but I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just my imagination running wild. I stayed. That day, I didn't wander far. I stayed close to my campsite, kept the fire going. I didn't hear anything strange, didn't see anything unusual. By nightfall, I was starting to convince myself that I had overreacted, that it really had been just an animal, just the natural sounds of the woods. Then, just as I was about to turn in for the night, I saw it. On the other side of the creek, just beyond the firelight, something was standing there, watching me. It wasn't a person. I could tell that much. Too tall, too thin. Its shape was wrong, its posture unnatural. My mind struggled to make sense of it. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there, barely visible in the dim light, a shadow among the trees. I grabbed my flashlight, my hands shaking, and pointed it towards the figure. Nothing, just trees. But I knew what I saw. My whole body was screaming at me to run, to leave, to get as far away from that place as possible. I threw my gear into my pack, barely bothering to fold my tent. I didn't care. I needed to go. I moved fast, following the creek downstream. My flashlight cut through the dark, but every time I looked back, I felt like something was just outside its reach. Something just beyond my sight, following me. I walked for hours, pushing forward even when my legs ached, even when my breath came in ragged gasps. At some point, I lost the creek. I don't know when. I don't know how. One moment it was there. The next, I was surrounded by trees, by darkness. My compass was no help. It spun wildly, refusing to settle. My map was useless. My phone had no signal. Panic set in. I wasn't just lost. I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. That's when I heard it again. The moan. Closer this time. Too close. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out and I collapsed into the dirt. I listened. Silence. Just my own ragged breathing. Then a whisper, right next to my ear. I don't remember getting up. I don't remember running again. But somehow I did. I ran until I saw the first hints of dawn breaking through the trees, until I stumbled onto an old dirt road, until I finally saw another human being, a hunter out for the morning. He looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was. I didn't tell him what I saw. I didn't tell anyone. I just got in my car and drove, leaving that place behind. But I still hear it. At night in the quiet, that long, drawn-out wail. And sometimes, just for a moment, I swear I see something standing at the edge of the woods, watching. I never should have gone into those woods. That thought came later, of course. At the time, it seemed like just another hiking trip, just another solo venture into the deep wilderness, something I had done 100 times before. I had always felt comfortable alone in nature. There was a kind of peace to it, an escape from the world. But this trip was different. It started with a map, an old one I found in a used bookstore. It was hand-drawn, the edges curled and browned with time. A place was marked deep in the forest, just a tiny with a scribbled name next to it, Devil's Jaw. I had never heard of it before. There were no trails leading to it, no official routes. That intrigued me. I spent the next few weeks researching, but I found almost nothing. The name didn't appear on any modern maps. It was like it had been forgotten. That only made me want to find it more. I packed lightly, just the essentials. Water, food, my GPS, a compass, a good knife. I didn't bother telling anyone exactly where I was going. I just said I was heading out for a few days like I always did. I figured I'd be fine. The first day went smoothly. The hike was hard, but not impossible. The deeper I went, the fewer signs of human activity I saw. No old campfire pits, no wrappers or footprints. Just pure, untouched forest. The air smelled damp and rich with pine. The only sounds were the wind through the trees, the occasional snap of a branch. It was beautiful. That night, I made camp in a small clearing, built a fire, ate, and watched the stars. I had no sense that something was wrong. Not yet. But in the middle of the night, I woke up. It was dead silent. No wind, no insects, nothing. Just silence. I don't know what woke me, but my skin was cold with sweat. I listened for a long time. Then, far off in the distance, I heard something. A dull, rhythmic sound. It didn't sound like an animal. It didn't sound like anything I recognized. I stayed awake for a long time, gripping my knife, listening. But the sound never came closer, and eventually, I drifted back to sleep. The next morning, I packed up and kept going. I told myself it was just my imagination, that the woods had a way of playing tricks on the mind. But as I hiked deeper, I started to notice things that made me uneasy. The trees were different here, thicker, their bark gnarled and scarred. Some of them had deep grooves in them, like something had clawed at them. Others had strange symbols carved into their trunks, old and faded. I ran my fingers over them. They didn't look like anything I had seen before. Around midday, I found something even stranger. Bones. Not just one or two, but a whole pile of them scattered near a dead tree. They weren't fresh, but they weren't ancient either. Some still had scraps of dried flesh clinging to them. Animal bones, I told myself. Probably a deer, but there was something wrong about them. Some were cracked open, hollowed out. I moved on faster now. Something about this place made my skin crawl. The deeper I went, the more uneasy I felt. The woods were too quiet. Felt like I was being watched. I kept catching movement in my peripheral vision. Just quick, flickering shapes that disappeared when I turned my head. By late afternoon, I reached a ravine. It wasn't on my map, but I could see a way down. A narrow, treacherous path along the rocks. It was risky, but I was close to Devil's Jaw. I could feel it. The air had changed, thick with something I couldn't name. I made my way down slowly, testing each step. Halfway down, I slipped. My foot caught a loose rock, and suddenly I was falling. My body slammed into the rocks, and I tumbled, barely managing to grab a jagged ledge before I went over the edge completely. My hands were bleeding, my head ringing. My backpack had been ripped away in the fall. I took a moment to breathe, to gather myself. Then I looked down. The bottom of the ravine was littered with bones. Not just animal bones. Some were too large, too human-like. Some had clothes still clinging to them, torn, weathered fabric. I felt my stomach twist. There were too many. Dozens, maybe more. And then I saw something else. Footprints. Fresh ones. Leading away into the darkness of the trees. My body locked up. I wasn't alone. I scrambled up the rocks, ignoring the pain. I had to get out. My backpack was gone, my supplies with it, but I didn't care. I just needed to move. I climbed, slipping, cursing, desperate to get back to higher ground. By the time I reached the top, the sun was setting. The woods stretched out around me, dark and endless. I started running. I didn't care about direction anymore. I just wanted to get away. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. Then I heard it. Behind me, footsteps, fast ones. I ran faster. My legs burned. My breath was ragged. The footsteps were getting closer. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what was behind me. Then, up ahead, I saw something familiar. My old campsite from the night before. I veered toward it, heart hammering. My fire pit was still there, the ashes cold. My tracks from yesterday were still visible. But something was different. My tent was gone, vanished like it had never been there at all. I didn't stop. I kept running, pushing forward even as exhaustion crept in. My body ached. My lungs burned. The footsteps behind me never slowed. They never wavered. Just steady, relentless pursuit. Then, just when I thought I couldn't go any farther, I saw light. A road. A goddamn road. I stumbled toward it, my legs barely working. And then, suddenly, the footsteps behind me stopped. I turned, gasping, but there was nothing. Just empty trees, still and silent. The woods had swallowed whatever was chasing me. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I threw myself inside, locked the doors, and tore out of there so fast my tires kicked up gravel. I never went back. To this day, I don't know what I saw, what I heard, or what was following me. But I know one thing for certain. There is something in those woods, and it does not want to be found. I never should have gone alone. That thought kept pounding in my head as I pushed deeper into the woods, my breath coming out in ragged gasps. I wasn't lost, at least not yet, but I was far from the trail, and the last bit of sunlight had already dipped below the treetops. The plan was simple: a solo backpacking trip through a stretch of national forest in Oregon, a place not many people ventured. I wanted to clear my head, disconnect from everything, get lost in the silence of the deep woods. But I underestimated just how silent it would be. No cars, no distant hum of civilization, just the occasional rustle of leaves, the creak of branches in the wind, and my own footsteps crunching on the undergrowth. I'd started early in the morning, setting out with enough food and water to last me 3 days. The first few hours were uneventful. The forest was thick, the trees towering above, their trunks stretching high and straight like pillars. The air smelled damp, rich with the scent of pine needles and wet earth. It was beautiful in a lonely sort of way. By noon, I had ventured off trail, following an old game path I found near a small creek. The map I had was outdated, but I felt confident. I had my compass, a GPS, and my instincts. I thought I knew what I was doing. The first sign that something was wrong came in the late afternoon. I noticed the woods had gone unnervingly quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just my own breath and the soft crunch of my boots. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe just the time of day, maybe the altitude, but my gut knew better. Animals go silent when there's a predator nearby. I scanned the trees, expecting to see movement. A mountain lion, maybe, a black bear, but there was nothing, just the endless trees stretching in every direction. Still, I felt it, a presence. Not something I could see, but something I could sense, something just out of reach. I kept moving, a little faster now, trying to ignore the unease curling in my stomach. The game trail had faded, but I told myself I could find it again. I had marked my route. I wasn't lost. Then I found the footprints. They weren't mine. They were old, sunken into the damp earth, but still clear enough to see. Bare feet, human. At first, I thought maybe some other hiker had come through, but these weren't normal hiking tracks. The steps were uneven, erratic, almost like whoever made them had been limping, and they led deeper into the woods, away from any trail, away from any sign of civilization. I told myself to turn back. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave, but some stubborn part of me, some part that didn't want to admit I was scared, kept me moving forward. A mile later, I found the first sign of real trouble. A small clearing, ringed with thick pines, their branches so dense they barely let in the last of the evening light. In the middle of the clearing was a fire pit, old, long abandoned. Around it, scattered bones. Not fresh, not bloody, but unmistakably human. A femur, part of a rib cage, a skull missing its jaw. The bones were bleached, as if they had been here for years. I froze. My mind raced for an explanation, but none of them were good. Then, a sound. A soft rustling in the underbrush. I turned too quickly, my boots slipping on the damp earth, and fell hard onto my side. My heart was pounding. Nothing moved. The forest was still. But I knew something was watching me. I scrambled to my feet, my breathing fast and shallow. I needed to get out of here. My hands shook as I pulled out my compass, trying to orient myself. The needle spun wildly, refusing to settle. My GPS was useless, frozen on a blank screen. I turned back the way I had come, moving quickly now, but the trees all looked the same. The trail had vanished, swallowed by the forest. I picked a direction and walked, forcing myself to stay calm, to keep moving. Minutes passed, then hours. The forest grew darker. I should have reached the creek by now, but I hadn't. Then I saw the footprints again, fresh this time, bare feet pressing deep into the mud, leading in circles. My own footprints weren't there. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. I walked faster. My legs ached. The darkness grew around me. I kept moving, my flashlight beam cutting through the trees. Every so often, I saw something, shadows shifting, movement just beyond the reach of my light. And then I heard it, a low, wet breathing. Close, too close. I ran. Branches whipped against my face, tore at my arms, my legs. My pack felt too heavy, weighing me down. I kept running, lungs burning, legs screaming. The sound followed me, steady, unhurried. Then I saw it, a shape ahead, just beyond the trees. A structure, barely visible in the darkness. A cabin. I sprinted toward it, bursting through the door, slamming it shut behind me. The air inside was thick, stale. My flashlight flickered, casting weak light across the room. It was empty, dust-covered, abandoned for years. Then I saw the walls. Etched into the wood, deep and frantic, were words. Over and over again, scratched by desperate hands. ITCs. It watches. It waits. Asterisk, asterisk, and below it, fresher, deeper, don't run. It likes to chase. Asterisk, asterisk, a new sound. The floorboards creaked. Inside the cabin, I didn't turn around. I didn't breathe. The last thing I remember was the feeling of something just behind me, close enough to touch. Then everything went black. I woke up in the middle of the trail. Morning light filtered through the trees. My pack was gone. My gear, my flashlight, everything gone. My hands were caked in mud. My arms covered in deep scratches. I don't know how I got there. I don't know how I made it out. But I never went back. And I never will. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was boredom, or maybe I just wanted to prove to myself that I could. The woods behind my cabin stretched for miles, mostly unexplored by me. I'd lived there for nearly 2 years, and I'd stuck to the marked trails like everyone else. But that day, I wanted to go further. I wanted to go deeper into the woods where no paths existed, where the trees stood untouched and ancient, where the world felt raw and forgotten. I packed light, a flashlight, a hunting knife, a bottle of water, and some protein bars. I told myself I wouldn't go too far, just a few miles in to see what was there. Maybe I'd find an old deer stand, or the remains of some forgotten logging camp. The idea of stumbling across something left behind fascinated me. I set off in the late afternoon when the sun was still high, thinking I'd be back before dark. The first hour was easy. The forest was thick, but the trees weren't as tightly packed as I expected. I followed deer trails when I could, stepping carefully to avoid twisting an ankle on hidden roots. Birds chirped, squirrels rustled in the undergrowth, and the wind carried the scent of damp earth and pine. Felt peaceful, even a little exciting. Then I found the clearing. It wasn't marked on any map I'd seen. The ground was flattened, the grass dead and brittle. No trees grew in the center, just a wide open space about 50 feet across. Felt unnatural. I walked around the edges, looking for any sign of what might have caused it. No burn marks, no fallen trees. It was just empty. I didn't like it. Something about it made my skin prickle. I moved on, pushing deeper into the forest. The trees grew denser, the light dimming as the canopy thickened overhead. The further I went, the quieter everything became. No more birds, no more rustling leaves, just the sound of my own breathing and the crunch of twigs underfoot. It was unsettling, but I pushed forward. That's when I noticed something was off. The trees looked different. The bark was rougher, darker, almost black. The ground felt softer, like it had been disturbed. The air smelled wrong. Not like rot, but something old, something that had been left to sit for too long. My instincts told me to turn back, but I ignored them. I wanted to see more. I needed to know what was out here. Then I found the first bone. It was half buried in the dirt, long and smooth. Too big for a deer, too thick for a bird. I crouched down and brushed away the soil, revealing more bones underneath. A ribcage, a skull, human. The sockets stared up at me, hollow and dark. I stumbled back, heart hammering. I should have left then. I should have turned around and run. But I didn't. I heard something move. It wasn't close, but it was there. A shift in the undergrowth, a soft crunch of leaves. My fingers tightened around my knife as I scanned the trees. Nothing, just shadows stretching long in the fading light. But the feeling was there. Something was watching me. I backed away from the bones, moving slow, keeping my breathing steady. I turned to retrace my steps, but the path I'd taken was gone. The deer trails I'd followed had disappeared, swallowed up by the forest. I checked my compass, useless. The needle spun lazily, refusing to settle. Panic rose in my chest, but I shoved it down. I wasn't lost. I just had to move in a straight line, keep my head clear, and I'd make it back to familiar ground. I picked a direction and walked. Minutes passed, then an hour. The forest only got darker. My flashlight cut through the blackness, but the beam felt weak, swallowed up by the towering trees. The ground was uneven, covered in roots that seemed to reach for my ankles. Then I saw it, another clearing. But this one wasn't empty. A structure stood in the center, half collapsed, its wooden beams rotting with age. It looked like an old hunting cabin, but something about it was wrong. The walls slanted at odd angles. The roof sagged inward like something had crushed it. My gut told me to stay away, but I needed shelter. The temperature was dropping, and I had no idea how much farther I had to go. I stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with dust and decay. Old furniture sat scattered, broken and useless. A rusted stove leaned against one wall, its pipe leading nowhere. But what caught my attention was the trapdoor in the floor. It was slightly open. A draft of cold air seeped out, carrying with it a scent I couldn't place. Not death, not rot, something else, something worse. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The hole beneath was deep, lined with old stone. A set of wooden steps led downward, vanishing into the darkness. My flashlight barely reached the bottom. Something moved down there. Not an animal, not a person, something. I slammed the trapdoor shut and backed away, my breath coming fast. The woods outside were silent, too silent. I had to leave. I had to get out. I ran. Branches whipped at my face. Roots tried to trip me, but I didn't stop. My lungs burned. My legs ached, but I kept going. The sound of my own footsteps echoed too loud, and in between them, I swore I heard something else. Something behind me, matching my pace, just out of sight. I don't know how long I ran, but suddenly, I was back on a trail, a real marked trail. I recognized it. It led back to my cabin. I didn't question how I found it. I just ran. I didn't stop until I was inside, door locked, lights on. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window watching the tree line. Nothing came out. Nothing followed. The next morning, I packed my things. I left that cabin and never went back. I don't care what was in those woods. I don't care what I found. Some places aren't meant to be explored. I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to hike alone. Maybe it was the stress of work or just the need to be away from everything for a while. I had done solo hikes before, but nothing like this. This time, I wanted something deeper, something isolated, something real. I planned it for weeks, poring over maps, watching videos on survival, packing just enough supplies to last a few days, but not so much that I couldn't carry it all on my back. The place I chose was deep in the Appalachian wilderness, miles away from any roads or towns. No cell service, no people, just me and the woods. I wanted to push myself, to test my limits. I parked my truck on the edge of a logging road, checked my gear one last time, and started walking. The first day was fine. The trails were rugged but manageable. The air was crisp, and the sound of birds and rustling leaves filled the silence. I felt good, confident. The deeper I went, the less sign of people I saw. No footprints, no trash, just untouched nature. It was exactly what I wanted. That night, I set up camp by a small stream. I built a fire, cooked some dehydrated food, and sat back, listening to the water. The darkness in the woods is different from the darkness anywhere else. In the city, even in small towns, there's always some light. Out here, it was absolute. I could see the stars, but beyond the glow of my fire, there was nothing but black. I went to sleep feeling small, but not scared. Not yet. The second day, things started feeling off. I can't explain it in a way that makes perfect sense, but it was a feeling like being watched. I chalked it up to nerves and kept moving. The deeper I went, the denser the trees got. The air felt heavy, still. The sound of birds was gone. I didn't even notice when they stopped, but once I did, it was all I could think about. It was too quiet. Midway through the day, I found something strange. A deer carcass. It wasn't fresh, but it wasn't fully decayed either. The odd part was how it looked. It wasn't eaten, not really. The skin was torn in long, clean slashes, almost like it had been cut. I told myself it was just a predator, maybe a bear. But bears tear, they don't cut. I moved on. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I set up camp as usual, but my hands were shaking as I built the fire. I forced myself to eat, forced myself to breathe slow. Every snap of a branch made my skin crawl. I told myself it was just my imagination. Then, in the middle of the night, I heard it. A single, sharp whistle. Not a bird, not wind. A human whistle, short and deliberate. My blood went cold. I sat up, heart pounding. I listened. Nothing. Just silence. I didn't sleep after that. By the third day, I was moving faster. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that I had come out here to be alone, and that's exactly what I got. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. It was that same sense of being watched, but stronger now. Closer. Around midday, I found more signs that something was wrong. More animals. Not just one this time. 2 deer, a fox, and something that might have been a coyote. All of them cut the same way. No scavengers had touched them. That wasn't right. Something in me screamed to turn back. But I was already deep in. I thought about the maps, about the distance, and told myself I had to push forward. That evening, I forced myself to make camp. I built a fire bigger than the nights before. I sat with my back to a tree, watching the darkness. Every sound made my skin crawl. Then I heard it again. The whistle. Closer this time. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just listened. My mind raced through every possible explanation. A lost hiker? A hunter? But deep down, I knew. I knew I was not alone. The sound came again, this time from a different direction. My stomach twisted. More than one. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat there, gripping my knife, watching the trees, waiting. By dawn, I made a decision. I was getting out. I packed up in minutes, barely eating, barely thinking. I just moved. I moved fast. Too fast. Around midday, I realized something horrifying. I was going in circles. I should have been heading west, back toward my truck, but I saw the same stream I had passed in the morning. I had walked in a full loop without realizing it. My hands started to shake. I forced myself to stop, to breathe, to check my compass. It was broken. That was impossible. It had worked that morning. I checked my map, tried to get my bearings, but everything felt wrong. The trees looked the same. The land didn't match what I remembered. I picked a direction and walked. For hours. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. My own campsite from the night before. I had been walking in circles again. That was when I heard the sound. Not a whistle this time. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Just beyond the trees. I didn't think. I ran. I ran harder than I've ever run in my life, cutting through branches, stumbling over roots, lungs burning. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran. Then, by some miracle, I hit a trail. A real trail. A man-made path, one I hadn't seen before. I didn't stop. I followed it, not caring where it led, as long as it was away. After what felt like forever, I saw something through the trees. A road. My truck. I stumbled toward it, threw myself inside, locked the doors. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the keys in the ignition. The engine roared to life. I hit the gas. As I sped away, I looked in the rearview mirror. For just a second, I thought I saw movement at the tree line. But I didn't stop. I didn't look again. I just drove. I don't know what was out there. I don't want to know. I just know I'm never going back. The first time I saw the clearing, I didn't think much of it. It was just an open patch of dirt deep in the woods, surrounded by towering trees. But something about it felt off. I should have trusted my gut. I had been hiking for hours, following a game trail that wound through thick underbrush. The sun was still up, but the light barely made it through the dense canopy. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. Birds stopped chirping, insects disappeared. The only sound was my own footsteps crunching on dried leaves. I didn't have a plan, just wanted to get away from everything for a while. I was carrying a small pack with some water, a knife, and a protein bar. No map.
No GPS.
Just my phone, which had lost signal an hour ago. That should have been my first warning. When I found the clearing, I decided to rest. It was a nearly perfect circle of bare earth. No grass, no fallen leaves. Like something had been clearing it regularly. There were no stumps, no sign that trees had ever grown there. Just empty dirt, surrounded by thick forest on all sides. It didn't look natural, but I was tired and didn't think too hard about it. I sat down, took a sip of water, and wiped sweat off my forehead. That's when I noticed something. The forest was completely silent. Not just quiet, silent. I couldn't hear a single sound. No wind, no rustling leaves, nothing. A chill ran down my spine. I stood up and looked around. The trees seemed wrong. Too straight, too uniform, like they had been planted in rows, but at odd, unnatural angles. The branches twisted in strange ways, some pointing straight up, others bending toward the clearing. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt the urge to leave. It wasn't panic yet, but something deep inside me was screaming that I shouldn't be there. I turned back the way I came, but the path was gone. I know that sounds impossible, but I swear, the trail I had followed for hours had disappeared. I looked around, trying to retrace my steps, but the trees all looked the same. No broken branches, no footprints, just endless forest. My heartbeat sped up. I told myself I had just gotten turned around, that I could find my way back if I stayed calm. But as I took a step forward, the silence pressed in harder. Then I heard something, a single sharp crack, like a branch breaking underfoot. Not mine. I froze, listened. Nothing, just silence. But I wasn't alone anymore. I scanned the trees, looking for movement. Nothing, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. My skin crawled. I forced myself to move, walking quickly, trying to pick a direction. I didn't care which way, I just needed to get away from that clearing. I kept walking, pushing through thick brush, tripping over roots. My breathing was too loud. My footsteps felt like gunshots in the silence. Then I saw it again. The clearing. I had been walking in a straight line. I was sure of it, but I was back where I started. Panic set in. I wasn't lost, I was trapped. Something wasn't right. I turned around and ran, sprinting this time, not caring about the branches whipping at my face. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs felt like they would give out. Then the clearing again. I dropped to my knees, gasping for air. My vision blurred with sweat. I didn't understand. This wasn't possible. Then I saw the footprints. Not mine. They circled the clearing, pressed deep into the dirt. Bare feet. Too many. Some small, some large. Some wrong. Toes too long. Spaced strangely. Some prints had more than 5 toes. My stomach twisted. I forced myself to stand, shaking. I wouldn't run again. It didn't help. Instead, I turned slowly, scanning the trees, looking for whatever had made those prints. Nothing, but I could feel them, watching, waiting. The air felt thick, like I was breathing something rotten. My body was screaming to move, to get away. I reached into my pack, grabbed my knife. It was small, useless, but it made me feel better. I picked a direction and started walking, slow and steady, not looking back. The silence followed me. I don't know how long I walked. Maybe an hour, maybe 3. The trees never changed. The forest never opened up. But I kept moving. Then something shifted. The silence broke. A distant bird call, a rustling in the leaves, the normal sounds of the woods. I kept walking, heart pounding. And finally, the trees thinned. I stumbled onto a dirt road. Empty, but real. I almost collapsed with relief. I wasn't sure where I was, but it didn't matter. I followed the road until I found a highway. Eventually, a passing truck stopped for me. I didn't tell the driver what had happened. I didn't have the words. I still don't. I've tried to find that place again. I've gone back, retraced my steps, but it's not there. The clearing is gone. Or maybe it never existed. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the woods, I feel it. The silence, the wrongness, and I keep walking. I never should have gone into those woods alone. I've been hiking my whole life, and I know how to handle myself. I always pack the essentials, tell someone where I'm going, and keep my wits about me. But something about that forest was different, something I can't explain. It started as a regular solo trip. I had taken a few days off work and wanted to disconnect from everything. No phone, no emails, just me and nature. I had planned to camp deep in a national forest, miles from any trailhead. I chose a place I had read about online, a remote area that few people visit. It sounded perfect. The hike in was rough. No marked trails, just game trails and a GPS. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. No birds, no wind, just my boots crunching through leaves. By late afternoon, I reached a clearing and decided to set up camp. The place felt off, but I brushed it off as exhaustion. That first night, I didn't sleep well. The forest felt alive in a way I wasn't used to. I kept hearing small movements in the distance. Twigs snapping, leaves rustling, but nothing big enough to be a deer or a bear. It sounded like something smaller, something moving cautiously. I told myself it was just the woods settling, but my gut said otherwise. The second day, I planned to explore. I packed light, just water, a knife, and my GPS. I wandered deeper, following a stream. The trees here were massive, their trunks twisted and gnarled like something out of a nightmare. The deeper I went, the worse I felt. I found something strange around midday, a clearing but not a natural one. The trees had been cut cleanly with tools. The stumps were old, weathered, but the cuts were precise. There were no trails leading in or out, no sign of recent activity, just this odd patch of dead space in the middle of the woods. I felt exposed standing there, like I was being watched. Then I saw the bones, a pile of them just beyond the clearing, half buried under leaves. Some looked like deer, but others were too small. I tried to convince myself they were just animal remains, but my gut told me otherwise. Something wasn't right. I turned back immediately, moving faster than I should have. I kept my knife in my hand, my senses on high alert. The forest felt different now, like it was closing in. Every sound made my skin crawl. I swore I heard footsteps behind me, matching my pace, stopping when I stopped. By the time I reached camp, the sun was setting. I packed up in a hurry. I wasn't spending another night out there. I checked my GPS and started heading back the way I came. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. I didn't see anything at first, just movement in the trees. Something or someone was following me. I picked up my pace, trying to stay calm, but it stayed with me. Sometimes I caught glimpses of it, a shape darting between trees, just out of focus. Then I heard breathing, not mine. I ran. I don't know how long. I tripped, got up, kept moving. My only thought was getting out. My GPS was useless. I had no idea where I was anymore. I just ran. At some point, I found the stream again. I followed it, hoping it would lead me somewhere safe. The thing following me never stopped. It never got closer, but it never left. Night fell, and I had no choice but to stop. I found a rocky outcrop and climbed it, hoping for some safety. I didn't sleep. I sat there, knife in hand, listening. By morning, it was gone, or at least I thought it was. I climbed down and kept moving. Hours passed. My legs felt like lead, my throat was dry, but I kept going. Then I saw it. Not a person, not an animal, something else. Tall, thin, almost human, but not quite. It was watching me from the tree line. I don't remember its face. I don't want to. I ran again. I don't know how, but I made it out. I stumbled onto an old logging road sometime in the afternoon, and a passing truck picked me up. The driver said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I didn't correct him. I never reported it. What would I say? That I saw something out there? That I felt hunted? No one would believe me. Hell, I barely believe myself. But I know this, something lives in those woods. Something that doesn't want to be found. And I was never supposed to leave.